All right, so I'll try to do this one take. So, yeah, there's been a lot of some interest expressed in a couple of things that I've been looking into the last couple of years, namely authorization, like out-of-the-box solutions for authorization, and Hasura, which I love. I have a lot of experience with Hasura. I don't have so much experience with Keycloak, but we're going to start with Keycloak to get it off the get it off our plate, and we'll spend most of our time on Hasura. But Keycloak is so you can just run it yourself. So I have this project here. This is my all the little toys project. So anytime I get a little itch to play around with a new technology, I just add it to this repo, and I've been adding like Kubernetes stuff and but we're not going to do the Kubernetes stuff. I just have a little Docker Compose and Docker Compose up, and it runs all of these things. So we got a next application, Postgres, Keycloak, Hasura, and Mailhog, and we'll get to Mailhog later. But basically, it catches all your SMTP traffic. I'm not sure if we're going to demo that, but stay focused, Corey. So yeah, here's the next application right here. It's just a little example application, and it is running. Where is it? Right here. So it has this Keycloak provider that's just a library, and you give it a config, and you set it up, and it's a provider. You know, this is all box standard React stuff. Don't normally use Keycloak specific provider. Normally, what I would do is something like next auth, but I played around with it for a little while. For whatever reason, I couldn't get I couldn't get Keycloak to work with next auth, even though they have a provider for it. But for whatever reason, I couldn't get it working. But I'm sure it's something dumb. But anyway, so let's go through setting that up. So that's the next application. We also have the other application, which is Keycloak, and it's right here. So Keycloak is it's like a Java application, I think, or something. It's huge. It does like federation, everything. I don't know. What is my password? Is it just password? Of course it is. All right. Yeah, this is all local stuff, so nothing's secure. Okay, so Keycloak has this concept of realms. So you can have different realms for each different client, so to speak. I mean, like client, like business client, like ASCA or I don't know, eTrax or something. We could have a different realm for each one of those, and within each realm, you could have a different client set up for different applications. So maybe you have different authorizations that you want to allow specifically for a specific client, like you want your, there's some kind of ASP.NET application that has a client, and then you have a React that has its own client, and you don't want to share the two for some reason. But it starts out, you just have a master realm. Again, I'm not a huge expert on here, but master realm is basically like the admin realm. It comes by default, and you can add so if we wanted to create you can create, it's a realm in itself, so you can create clients for it and everything. But like if you want to add users, it's just the admin user. If you want to add someone who wants to be able, you want to allow to be able to administer, you would add it to a user to this one. And this user only exists, this admin user, and any users that you add in here only exist in the master realm. So it's separated, right? There's a word for that. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a fancy word, and we're not going to remember it. So we're going to move on. You have groups, and it does all the fancy. This just like settings for days here. Like this is a feature complete like thing. But like I said, I don't know a whole lot about Keycloak. Let's just get to setting it up so we can just authorize for for this Next.js application. So we need to configure a realm for it. To do that, we need to, I don't know what the resource file does, but we're going to do, we're just going to call this next realm and enabled, and it's been created successfully. And we go here to clients, and we see all of these default ones. I don't know what they do, but we need to go here and create one. We'll create, we'll call it next client ID. And name's optional, description, we don't need none of all that. And do we need? I don't think so. Don't think so. All right, so that should be saved, and you can do your root URLs, a valid redirect URLs, but I think we're good to configure. So this realm should match the realm name, which is next realm, and the client ID that we're trying to use should match the client ID over here. So that's next client ID. That's why I named them that, because we already had it configured here. Okay, so that should be good. This is not going to work. No, it's not going to work. Of course, it's not going to work. What did I do? Do I need a redirect URL? Let's just do star. I don't know. We'll find out. All right, looky there, and we can't log. I think we actually. Can I? I don't think admin can. Yeah, admin doesn't exist in this realm. So this password. Okay, yeah. Okay. So that's that. Let's go here and let's just create a user for this realm right quick. Let's call Corey and password. Oh. Where's my password? All right, do I get to pick a password? No, I don't. Okay, let's try Corey. Nope. Honey, where do you get the password from? I can create the user. Credentials, set password. Okay, looks good. I just want to go through all of this just so we're complete. It's just so we can sell the whole thing. Yeah. And so I didn't build these screens at all. Those screens that are popping up, that is completely on. I don't know why it's saying I'm not logged in. Again. Go to profile, whatever. Okay, so we logged in. There's some other stuff going on, but all of that stuff exists on the Keycloak side, and there are actually, you configure like the look and feel. So you can do like a headless version where you're just interacting via API, or you could do like templates for each one of these screens if you really needed to set it. And that might be one reason why you would have a different client set up for a different application, because maybe it's using a different style guide for this application than another, right? You don't want it to be too jarring. Maybe that's one reason for it, but I forget. It's around here somewhere. You can configure these pages using like a template scheme. I think it's kind of like handlebars or something. Anyway, flow name. Whatever. This is Keycloak. And so you can just run one instance, and as you can see, it's running on Docker here. It's not a huge memory hog. Run it locally. Like I mentioned it earlier, I was running it on a Raspberry Pi cluster. I mean, it's not a big deal. So that's Keycloak. The big one I wanted to talk about was Hasura, because I want to be clear, with Keycloak we could deploy one instance and manage multiple clients, multiple deployments for clients, and I think it even does like what's the word, federation or something, is where you do LDAP and Active Directory and stuff. You can connect that up and stuff. It's like, it's pretty snazzy from what I can get. Yeah, user federation. You can add LDAP providers. Identity providers. Okay, so we saw the little login page. I know we said we're moving on to Hasura. But you can add configurations for each one. So that was user ID and password, right? Authentication. But you could set up right here GitHub authentication, or Microsoft, or LinkedIn, whatever provider that you want it to do. Social, you configure it here, and it's going to show up on that page after you configure it, because that's being provided by Keycloak, right? And we don't have to write any code to do that. We just click some stuff in here on the dashboard, and it works. I think you got to configure the secrets and stuff, though, right? Call back and redirect URLs and stuff like that on the, like Google dashboard or whatever. But not a big deal. Yeah, moving on. Hasura. This is a thing that really saves the time, though. I mean, there's one thing to not be re-implementing authorization, but being able to do so cheaply. So another thing we always do is we're always writing APIs for days, and there's almost zero reason to write them nowadays, in my personal opinion. Is you have something like Hasura. Hasura isn't the only one. It's probably the most feature complete that I know of, but you basically have Hasura. You just run it. Again, it's just a Docker container. It's open source. They have a community version. Of course, they have a SaaS version as well, if you want to do that as well. But you could just run it on your own. It's just a Docker container. And what it is you just point it at your database. You start tracking tables, or adding tables, or deleting tables, and it basically starts managing your database for you. You can do migrations. And it could track, it could track schema changes and all that jazz for you. At the same time it's doing that, whenever you track it, it also gets added to its GraphQL. It automatically gets exposed as a GraphQL API. So let's just do that right quick, and we'll do a couple examples. I'll show relationships and all this other stuff. So let's just connect a database, which is right here in front of my face. Things look different because I've only got half the page to work with. Okay, so we'll just call this DB. Database URLs come from an environment variable. My environment variable is in here. What is it? Yep, that's it. And I think there's one that it automatically picks up. I can't remember though. Can't remember what it is. Okay, so we set a database name and that, and okay, so we added the database, and there's nothing in this database. It's brand new, running in Docker. What is it? Okay, so it's got it. Yeah. Okay, all right. So I'm using the same database for Keycloak, right? So we could see a bunch of Keycloak tables and stuff. So if I had a different, I'm not going to do it because it doesn't matter, but I could set up a different database or a different schema to handle this separately. But let's just say that we want to add a new table. So this is like untracked tables. It looks at your database, says, okay, here's all the tables. What are we not tracking? Do you want to track them? And if you don't track them, then it's not going to show up in the API. But we can create a table, and we'll call this table name will be I don't know, users or something. Is users taken? We're going to find out. It'll have an ID, integer auto increment. Yoink. It is not nullable. It is unique. Actually, let's do this here. We can do. It's got some pre-created one. So we can do integer big int, int generated by default, random UID, or whatever. We can create an ID, a user ID, and we'll say there's a name, and yeah, okay, yeah, it's unique. I don't know why it's not saying it's unique. And then you could set a primary key if you wanted to. You can add a foreign key if there was a foreign key. Unique keys, we just added that right here and right here. Let's see, we added down here, add a unique key. You do that. Okay, whatever. You can do check constraints and everything. Let's just add the tables. Invalid type for column name. Oh, I didn't add the name, so name is text. Okay, so we got a table, and it does give you a view of the table, so you don't have to pull out your database client. You can just see see it in here. You can insert a row, you can manage the relationships and manage the permissions. So let's just add a API. Let's see here. Yeah, let's insert row. Corey, that'll be the first user. First user is Corey. And if we'd see it, it's just added right here. I can go in here and click to edit the row and save and all that jazz. No fields were modified. Okay, but I mean, that's all fine and good. But you see here, when we go back to the GraphQL API, we already have some queries that are already, we have a user's query, we have a user's aggregation query. It's where you can do like counts and statistics and stuff like that. The really nasty SQL statements, that's what you do with aggregates. And user by primary key. So and you can choose which fields you want to go in here, and you can type in here as well. You know, it has autocomplete, so you can do name. You can do type name, that'll come out. So we just have one user, and it's going to come back with Corey and a type name user if you want that information. This could be kind of useful if you're wanting to do some like runtime. I think it's useful for like caching, especially. So like if you have Apollo as your client or whatever, I'm pretty sure it uses this type name like by default to figure out what type of which cache it's supposed to go in, and then of course it uses ID to update the field, so it handles the cache updating via the type name and the ID. I think something to that effect. Handles it automatically for you. So that's the other half of this, is once you've got Hasura and it's making your API for you, well, now you don't have to spend a whole bunch of time with your client. You can just do something like Apollo, and you're just writing GraphQL queries, and it handles all the caching and the pagination and all of that nasty stuff that you would normally have to manually code up or painstakingly code up on the front end. It handles a lot of that for you. So you don't have to do, a lot of times, in particular with React applications, they'll have Redux will be used as a cache, like an in-memory cache. So you'll do a request and you'll cache it into the Redux store, and then you're updating or deleting entries from the store as you're making API requests. So it's like your local cache or whatever, but there are clients now that handle that caching for you automatically. You don't have to explicitly write reducers to handle those, to handle that state management. Yep. Okay, so this is all fine and well. I mean, ASP.NET, you can just scaffold a controller, right, and it handles all that for you. But the power, it comes from when you start adding relationships. So let's do, I don't know, posts, table name posts, because we're going to do a blog here. And the column is going to be integer, yeah, whatever. And then we'll call it the content. and it'll be text, and it'll be the user ID, which will be an integer, and it will not be nullable, and yeah, that's a unique. And anyway, you can spend a lot more time on this. Okay, so I'm going to add that. Notice it's adding indexes for me and stuff like that as well. And I think if we go back to public, is it going to so sometimes it can detect like if there's a foreign key relationship or something like that. It's not picking it up for some reason right now, but there is a foreign key relationship here. This relationship here, relationship type is an object relationship, I think. Let's see here. Reference table. I gotta put here. I'm just gonna put a name. User. And reference to users from column ID to what? Am I on the right table? I'm on users table. I'm on the wrong table, that's why. I gotta post. Alright. Sometimes it'll do hints. I don't know why it's not doing a hint. Did I do it right? Manager, user ID. Whatever. Object relationship. User. This is the name it's going to be. I believe this is the name that's going to show up in the schema. So you'll do like user, and then you can get the interior user information from the relationship. I'll show you in just a second. Yeah, this goes to users, and this is from user ID to user ID. And I believe that's saved. Yeah, so post ID user ID to users.id. Okay, and we don't have any data yet, so let's insert row. Let's do hello inventive, and let's do user ID, of course, 1, because it's the only user we have, and we'll click that. And let's go back to the API. All right. Now, oh, I need a user. I need posts. Post, and then I want the user and ID. Okay. So we're pulling out the related information. We're not just getting user ID. I do have user ID here if I wanted it, you know, like just by itself. But because we have that relationship defined, it's kind of like navigation properties in Entity Framework. You just dot your way to glory. Very similar thing. And this is where that, by the way, this is where that type stuff comes from. So as you have nested objects in here in your query, having the type name in the query allows it to normalize the data, right, in its cache. That's where it didn't really make sense if you're pulling a single one. You know what you're pulling, but this makes it explicit what type is, you know, what type is being related here. But yeah, you could see here you're automatically, you've got relationships. You do aggregation. Can I do an aggregation? No. Aggregations are, yeah, but I mean, this is still, if I can remember how to do, where, content, I can't remember this, it's been so long since I've written this, is equal to, well, this is not going to come up with anything, but it'll, am I missing a validation if I'm missing selection set for post? Oh, I don't remember. There's a like in here somewhere, I think. Like. Oh, or something. Whatever. I can't remember how to do queries off the top of my head. It's been a bit since I did GraphQL on the syntaxes. Silly. It's not bad. Missing selection set for post aggregate. Oh, that's why it's complaining. Because we were messing around there, and is that why I was complaining? Yeah. Okay. So, you know, it pulled up, and then this should come up with nothing because there's no foo, right? And yeah. So that handles that. And it handles security. The way it handles security, so right now we have an admin secret set. We see it here on the request headers. It has an admin secret set that you set whenever you create the Hasura instance. You don't send that out open. That's it. At best, that's something that you send maybe from a backend service to Hasura, but you know you wouldn't put that on your client or whatever. But it does have you have a JSON web token, and it has a shared secret with the JSON web token. And what that kind of looks like when you deploying things here is you'll have like a JWT secret, and it'll have some secret in there, and that's what it'll use to validate any JSON web token that you have, a bearer token that you send to Hasura, and then you can do. Can I do? Authorization. Is it going to show up? No. Alright, so there's like, usually, maybe because I have that set. There's a little thing that'll like a little person icon that shows up, and you click on it and you can actually see. So if you get a JSON to web token that you're wanting to use with your application, you come in here and you paste it in here, and you can click on it, and then you can see the information that's actually in the token. But that's not an essential feature to show off right now. Notice whenever I don't have the secret, like nothing's available, right? You can't see anything in the. But of course, when you do have a secret, or you have the right token with the right access, you can see what's available. And so that brings us to security. So you can go here to users, and if we want it to, so this is the user row, and usually this would be like users or profiles or something. Most of the time you don't want your users to be able to, you want to be able to query for their user, but you don't want to query for every user, and maybe you want to set permissions on there. So this is admin role, but if we have, I don't know, a user's role, and you can go in here and you can select, and we want it to select with, if I can remember how this works, with custom check. So if we want it to do no, not row select. Is it row select? Okay. I got a root field permissions, column permissions. Okay. Oh, to be clear, this would be like your X Hasura. This would be like in your JSON web token would have a role here, and it's part of the role field that will allow, it tells it which one it could be. So, but we're going to do, and we're going to set it up like there's a X Hasura user ID in there, and so X ID is equal to the usual name and convention is Hasura. X Hasura would do that, and then like user ID, and then that's the value, whatever value is in there. So if I have a JSON web token with 1, it's going to do a query basically where it says give me all users, select star where ID is equal to 1 basically, And so if I did a query with just user permissions, with this set, you're just going to get one row. You're just going to get whatever row equates to your single user. So that's how you can do row level permissions. You can also do column level permissions. Yeah, that's that. The green check mark means full permissions. Everything's wide open. Red means everything's closed off, and then the filter means there's some sub-selection between those two. So most things will probably be, filters and stuff. We won't do the rest of them. I think you guys kind of get the point that you can do permissions in a fairly easy way here. And what else? Okay, so the other thing. So there's actions as well. So sometimes you want to do things, you want side effects. So this is all like pure, right? Well, pure in the sense that everything goes directly to the database. There's nothing else happening on the side. This is all pure, either query to the database or writing to the database, or either reading or writing from the database, right? That's all that's going on right here. Except for some login, of course, that's on the side. But there's no like side effects, so to speak. But most of the interesting things we want to do are actually side effects. So let's say you want to send an email after the user updates its email address. That would normally just be a mutation on the GraphQL API. By the way, all the mutations are defined too. So if I do mutation and then update, I already have populated update users, update post mini by primary key. There's also upsert. Yeah, you have insert. I think there's one. I can't remember what you have. Deletes. I think there's an upsert. I think I think update is I think insert is just an insert. I think update is actually an upsert, if I'm remembering correctly. One of these is an upsert. I can't remember which one it was. But anyway, so you have the mutations out of the box too. So normally, all of this stuff that I mentioned here, even if you wanted to do GraphQL, this is not just GraphQL magic here. It is magical, but GraphQL doesn't normally do it. So you normally have to write all of these mutations. You have to write all these queries. You have to write all the resolvers and all of this stuff here. But all of that is being created for us just the same way as if we, had auto-generated a scaffolded an API in ASP.NET or something like that, but way, way more powerful. All right. What were we doing? That was mutations. Okay. So sometimes you want to send an action off to the side after you update the users. You want to do some kind of action off the side. So you can create an action. We'll say here, send verification email. Yeah, my spelling sucks. This is a little bit different since the last time I looked at it, so give me a second. Okay, it's doing some type generation. Okay, so what you would do is you basically give it a name, and then you give it some webhook or whatever that you. So maybe you have like a node servers on the side, and that's all it does is it handles these triggers, and it's like its own little microservices for these triggers, and so yeah. There's also headers and stuff. Yeah, this is letting you configure more things, like if you had to provide a secret key to be able to call this endpoint that you needed. So, but yeah, you create the action, and you have the action name right here. And if I remember, I can't remember. I'm getting a little fuzzy on this, guys. But, yeah, it's given. Yeah. Yeah, you should have you'll have like some route for that you'll switch off of the way we normally did it at my own company is we would have this giant switch statement that would just dispatch to all of it. So it would we'd have this one endpoint that was for all of our actions, and then there would be all of the action names. We would just switch on the action name. And I think it was actually in the input body. And so the input body, after you do this, so this, you're supposed to be able to associate this to a specific table. Am I misremembering? I know this works off of table updates. So you could say if a table got updated, or a table got row got updated, or a row got deleted. Maybe I'm thinking of events. Yeah. Okay, so I actually now that I think about it, I don't think I've really used actions. What were actions? I'm sure I've used them before, but anyway. So you have events as well. The events is you have, so I don't know what actions are for. What does it say? Go back. Actions. Action or custom queries to be that was. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if you need to offload something, so you still have it exposed through the Hasura API. Maybe you have this this specific endpoint that you want to expose through this API. You can expose it through an action. Yeah, validation and enrichment transaction. Okay. Yeah, this is one of the whatever you call it, the outlets for things that it can't handle. It gives you an outlet. And the other one is event triggers. Event triggers, they trigger off of update. You set the database, and then public and users, and then whenever they update their on their update, it's going to send to some endpoint. HTTP localhost 3000. We'll just do that. So it's going to send to some endpoint, and what it's going to include is going to include. Yeah, I'm remembering this now. It's going to include the event name, so the name here. And it's going to, I believe it's going to have the operation that triggered it. And it's also going to have the, at least for updates, it's going to have the before update and after update. I think even delete, insert, update, and delete. So it's going to have all those things. So it's all going to be in an object, and it's going to have all the information you need to detect what type of change happened with this event, and then do whatever it is that you need to do. So like you look and see if the old and the new email address are not the same, then send the email verification email, right? And save the verification code to the users table. You can do that on the side after it triggered. So yeah, that's triggers, and of course there's cron triggers as well. You can call things on a schedule, and then you can do things on an event. And there's also, where am I seeing it? You can also do just raw. I don't see it here anymore. Maybe they don't allow it anymore. There's usually just a raw SQL thing. Maybe it's because they're not explicitly SQL now. So whenever this first came out, it was built almost completely off of Postgres, right? And then they added support for SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server. And that was long and painful. I was with another client, and they really liked this idea, but the SQL Server adoption was, the SQL Server was announced as being as going like into beta, and that they had a release date and everything. So we decided, okay, we're going to take a risk and get it done. And and they said that it was going to be done by a certain date. Anyway, they didn't have complete SQL Server support. So like you could do get queries and stuff like that, but you couldn't do any mutations. It was a nightmare. But after we had already gotten it, they said we're going to support SQL Server, and then they announced that they support SQL Server, but we don't support mutations. I'm like, you don't support SQL Server. But anyway, that was a whole rabbit. It's if you're using Postgres, it's I know it's fully feature complete. I imagine SQL Server implementation is mostly complete now. Although, as an aside, I don't know why you would use Microsoft SQL Server unless the client was dictating that you had to use it, because you're just choosing for the client to have to pay money out of pocket for SQL Server when you can just get the free option, Postgres, which is just as good. But anyway, yes. Is there anything else that I needed to cover with this? There are probably... Okay, let's just wrap up here. I'm sure you could walk on it. What you've made it this far, and I'm like, what is the takeaway or whatever? Because you always watch demos and everything looks all hunky dory, and then when you start working with it, it's not so nice, right? There's some sharp points and rough edges and all that jazz. But this is truly awesome. I've used it on, I know for sure, 2 fairly significantly sized applications, and I'm pretty sure it may be 3 or 4. I can't remember if those actually got launched or not, but it's between 2 and 4 projects over a span of about 2 to 3 years. So I was pretty early on board with the Hasura train. So it's really nice. I kind of mentioned that I hadn't done a tremendous amount of API development before I came to Inventive, and for the last couple of years, maybe the last 2 or 3 years, and it's all because we were using Hasura. Because once you start using this, there's really no reason to go back. You combine this with Apollo and Next.js, you have server-side rendering, client-side rendering. You have easy schema management on your database. Oh, by the way, that's another thing too. So all of this is tracked with this metadata stuff. I'm not doing it here, but there's this other little command line thing that you do to generate. So this isn't all just lives in the instance. You can actually manage this as code. So this is what happens whenever you export the metadata, and it tracks the data. So this is metadata. It's saying this handles what it's tracking and how the tracking is configured, and then you have the migrations, which handles your usual up-down migration stuff, and it also applies it. So you can have a container. So like the workflow would be, as a developer, you're in local development, and you have the Hasura CLI pointed at a Hasura instance that you have locally, and then you make a change to the schema or whatever that you want to track. That gets saved to your repo. That gets committed in your your part of your feature development. It gets committed as part of your PR, and it gets reviewed accordingly. And then, of course, whenever it comes time to go into dev or staging or whatever, there's a container of Hasura that will automatically, so you'll get that container. When it starts up, it's going to look at its metadata, and if it has any unapplied metadata or any unapplied changes, it will go ahead and apply that automatically. Yeah, and so that's how. So it is actually managed in code. It's managed it's reproducible. But if you do make changes without that tracking enabled or whatever, so you can play around with things, but it'll only exist locally. You got to set the tracking and it'll only be tracked locally in this instance. You've got to do the CLI to do the tracking console and make the changes there, and then it updates the metadata, and then you commit that, and everything. It's code at that point. It's pretty good. I will say there are a couple of rough edges. It is, I think, difficult for some people to get used to, triggering off of events, because people are used to just mucking around in the controllers, right? I'm like, I need to send an email. Let's just put it right here, Never heard of dependency management. If you're really optimistic, they've heard of dependency management. They're going to use the email service, right? But we've all seen it, right? you get it done, and you're gonna do the email client.send right in the middle of the controller, and make everybody's life a living hell for trying to test it. But anyway. So I think if you're not used to GraphQL, if you've never used GraphQL, there's a little bit of learning curve there. It's not terrible. I can't say I dedicated time specifically to learning GraphQL. I just picked it up on the fly. But and there's another. I said this is a particular flavor of GraphQL that it's very regular, since all of this is basically generated, right? It's got this naming scheme, so it may not be a style of GraphQL that you're actually familiar with. I don't know. I've seen some pretty nasty GraphQL APIs, and this one's pretty regular. It's pretty consistent. But if if you have a very particular concern about what your GraphQL API should look like, then that is one concern. Oh, another little thing you can actually do. Let's do query post. You can analyze right here, and you can see the actual generated SQL, and it caches these generated SQL and stuff like that for you. These execution plans and all of that stuff for you, and I think it even does some measure of caching. I think it does some measure of request caching, but I can't say I don't know that for sure, but I think it does. It's almost always, unless you get some just really nasty, because this is. We could do if you have a recursive thing, you can drill down forever. There's no limit to how far you can go in there. There is a limit on. Oh yeah. There is one other limitation, and I think this is a GraphQL limitation. So you do get subscriptions out of the box. That is another thing. That's amazing about this. You can do subscriptions. You don't have to write any WebSockets or nothing like that. You just do it. This just works. You just write a GraphQL statement, and you add subscription here, and suddenly it's a subscription. If you do this, it can only have one root. So if I try to do users, if I want to pull users as part of the subscription as well, yeah. That is one limitation, and as far as I know, that's a limitation of GraphQL itself. I think that's part of the spec. But anyway, that's one of the little things that I've run into over the years. What else is difficult? This isn't a complete. That's another thing. It's not a complete solution for your API. It handles like 80% of what you want to do, but again, you're going to need another service off to the side, a little sidecar service that's handling these events and these actions and stuff like that. But it's not a pain at all. It's just I would much prefer to do this. I could do this for the rest of my career. I love it. But anyway, all right. If you stuck around, it's nearly an hour in. I don't know. I hope you guys found this. Oh yeah. Here's the other thing. I forgot to show this. There's also another little thing. So you could another big pillar of like the self-hosted thing is we wanted authentication. We needed some way to easily build out APIs, manage them a lot easier, and manage the database. That does that all in one with Hasura. But also you need to send out emails. But the problem with emails is usually you're using SendGrid. I don't know about you. I can't stand SendGrid. It's too heavyweight. It doesn't work correctly. Half the time it doesn't. Oh, your emails are being blocked. We can't do nothing. You got to buy a dedicated IP and whatever. but we just send SMTP. We have a connection to some SMTP service. We could just connect it to that from our code, and then we'll have to do some deep integration with SendGrid or another email provider or SES or something like that. We create our own templates. We send them SMTP like a good boy. and for that we have Mailhog off to the side, so we can use that in development to I could set this up to like verify users from Keycloak and have it send an email to this Mailhog, but like in development you could point it at Mailhog instead of a real SMTP service. Is it not going to work? It's not going to work. Okay. Please work. Okay. So basically this is a fake inbox, right? Everything that gets sent to this server just goes into inbox and it just lists all the emails here. So you could easily test in development. You don't have to be calling out to SES or SendGrid or whatever else. You just have SMTP connection and it's pointed at this in development, and it makes it a whole lot easier to, you don't have to worry about delivery issues or nothing like that, especially in development. It's a lot quicker. And again, it's just running as this is a little sidecar development thing. By the way, guys, I don't know about you. I set up a Docker Compose up on every project that I do. As much as possible, I try to get everything running with a single Docker Compose command. Like, I could just, like, we're done with the talk now, so I can just do Docker Compose down, and everything is going to get stopped. And I am cleaned up for that project for the day. You can see I have ASCA and Mass HVAC still going. Well, they're turned off right now as well. So, it's the same deal. I'm like, and then if you want to get going again, it's Docker Compose up /d. You combine this with like the dev containers with what's this? What's it? Dev. You combine this like a dev container where you open up your editor and it automatically starts everything up in a development container with all the dependencies. I think that's getting to where things are pretty nice. I don't know why it's not letting me. There we go. That's good. Yeah. See, now we're back up. So it's a lot easier. Anyway, let me know what you guys think, and you guys have a good day.